Hi, my name is Nils Naujoks and I'm a professional sim racer for G2 Esports. Overall, there's huge debate in sim racing whether or not hardware can make you faster. I don't think in particular if you have the talent, the hardware will make you shine or put you at the back of the field. In the past 2 decades, sim racing equipment has made a major leap. Of course, we were taking deeper takes onto pedals, racing wheels, PCs, and of course monitors as well. In particular, the monitor in sim racing is like one of the few connections you have to the car. Everything is perceived visually in the first place, and therefore it's really important to have high frame rates, low response rates of the monitor, because this gives you a competitive advantage in the end and makes it easier for you to perceive what the car is doing.
Between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Another day, another brace of races within our MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with PowerMax Racing and VRRC. Welcome to the Snetterton 300 circuit. David Addison and Andy McEwan looking forward to not only a championship situation that gets ever more fascinating by the week, but also seeing three new drivers coming into the mix and, of course, to see who is going to come out on top, because you've got this great mix of car, you've got this mix of sim and real-world driver, and you've got ballast to factor in yet again. We've had practice, we've got qualifying coming up, and then, as ever, our two races of 20 minutes plus a lap duration on a long lap, just under 3 miles. It's got fast bits, it's got twiddly bits, and it's got that almost paperclip style infield section that we know of old, Andy, in touring car racing can generate drama.
Yeah, it's a bit of an underrated circuit, this, I think, isn't it? A week ago we were at Alton, and no one can say enough good things about Alton Park, and yet Snetterton seems to sort of fly under the radar a bit, but it's one of my personal favourites. I think from a racing perspective, it's almost the perfect design, isn't it? You've got these really long straights where you can get a bit of a slipstream, and they're almost all followed by a big braking zone, which of course is the perfect catalyst for overtaking. So the Snetterton circuit, I think, will produce two exciting races today, and of course we're getting into the business end, into the middle now of the championship. We've started now to see a few of the championship favourites sort of come to the fore, but it's maybe over these two races and the two perhaps next week at Knock Hill where we'll really start to see who the favourites are going into the final few rounds.
Now, as far as the championship is concerned, it's been a little bit yo-yo for Dave Marshall. He had a good weekend at Alton Park, but not quite as good as Mike Epps, who is therefore 5 points ahead in the championship. Jack Keithley is third, ahead of Robbie Stapleford. Now, of those drivers, Mike Epps has had 2 race wins, and Robbie Stapleford has had 1. Jack Keithley and Dave Marshall yet to score a victory. After that, you've got Rob Butler, who won at Brands Hatch in the reverse grid race ahead of Max Goff, who's become a regular up at the pointy end. Jordan Brennan is 7th ahead of Senna Proctor, Max Bird, and Charlie Oliver, who's got this amazing run of 5 fastest race laps in a row. Mike Epps did it in the first race at Brands, and Charlie Oliver has had the fastest lap ever since. We know he's got the speed, and he's also had a couple of podiums over the course of the season. Ballast for the top 10. So Mike Epps gets 75 kilos again, because he stays in the lead of the championship. Dave Marshall lugs 66 around, 57 kilos for Jack Keithley, 48 kilos for Robbie Stapleford, 39 for Rob Butler. Max Goff gets 33, Jordan Brennan 27, Senna Proctor 21, Max Bird 15, Charlie Oliver 9, and then 45 kilos is very generously given in true touring car fashion to the new drivers, namely Dan Zelos, who we welcome from Real World Mini Racing and indeed eSports Minis. Jack McIntyre, likewise, he's another of the Mini eSeries drivers, and David Ward, who's done a bit of track day stuff and a bit of sim stuff. And he too joins the championship this weekend. Dave Marshall, actually, having said that he's runner-up in the championship currently here, is currently leading the Mini E-Series from Mike Epps, who's had a win in that already today. Jack McIntyre, another new driver to our touring car series, currently 3rd in the Minis. Jordan Brennan 4th, Max Edmondson 5th, Robbie Stapleford 7th, Dan Zelos 8th. So they're splitting their time between the Mini E-Series today and the touring car series, but of course spending a lot of time on the sim, which you'd think, Andy, is really going to help coming into this, because you're sharp. You know exactly what to expect. Different car, yes, but the same feeling of driving it on that sim, having been doing 2 races in a minute already today.
Yeah, exactly. I have been doing a little sim racing myself in the last few weeks. I've been getting into it, and even from my relatively inexperienced point of view, I can tell you that it does take you just that first sort of 10-15 minutes just to warm up, get back into the feel of it. And so, yeah, if they've already had a couple of races earlier on today, and of course they've had this practice session too, that will help just ease them into the competition. But there is nothing quite like competition, is there? And so once we get onto the grid for the first race, they'll sort of have to, if they haven't yet woken up fully, that's the point at which they have to. But yeah, I think we have seen a few times that those that have been racing in the 2 championships, both of which use the same Assetto Corsa platform as well, remember. So although the cars are different, the basic handling physics are going to be quite similar. The circuits, of course, are identical. So yeah, definitely a small advantage, I think, to those that are pulling double duty.
Absolutely so. Now, we've got the last 10 minutes of practice to go. For the benefit of the Newsham family's fans who have warned us off mentioning them, it's the bloke in number 16 quickest, and the bloke in number 17 is 4th at the moment. So they've had rotten luck both. Dad, I think, more so than Lad. Dave rather than Callum. But it is Callum Newsham currently at the top of the times, from Isaac Smith, Rob Butler 3rd. Now, I think we've fallen into the trap already this season of looking at practice times and thinking that's going to show us what qualifying is all about. And actually, it isn't always the way, is it? When you get to qualifying, it does look as though some of those that certainly are carrying more ballast are able to either adapt to it, or they've learnt during practice, or maybe just take it more seriously, step up to the plate, because it's often a very different order that we get from qualifying compared to practice.
Yeah, and some drivers they will openly admit, won't they, that qualifying and single lap pace just is not their thing. You know, some drivers are just better racers than qualifiers. And also, we don't really know what the drivers' agendas have been during this practice session, much as we would see in real-world motorsport. You know, teams will send their drivers out into a practice session, sometimes not even considering single lap pace, particularly, I think, if you're carrying ballast. You sort of write off qualifying. It's all about race pace, how you can manage the tyres with that extra success ballast on the car. And Snetterton is quite a tough circuit on tyres, it's tough on brakes. So, you know, there are lots of things to practice in a practice session, apart from just single lap pace. And it might be that some drivers maybe prioritise one over the other a little bit. At the moment, as you said, Callum Newsham looking strong, Dave Newsham in 4th position as well. It is about time, isn't it, that they had a bit of good luck. So good to see them on the pace again today. And again, as you hinted at, some of the championship contenders further down than you might expect, but I doubt they'll stay there once we get into qualifying in the races.
Go along with that. Fascinating view on the inset of Mick Sutton's rig and the setup with the 3 screens there, giving him pretty much uniform view all the way round. And as you might see in the view out of a real car. In fact, I think there might be a 4th screen somewhere in that setup actually as well. But he's not just staring forwards, he has got the perspective left and right of him as well. Mick has been, again, a little bit unlucky thus far within the championship, but it's good to have him on the grid. And the 60-year-old, whose son George has raced karts and junior saloons and been in the mini challenge, he's admitting he's new to sim racing, he wants to improve, and he's going the right way about it, because I think it's fair to say each time we've seen Mick this year, he's been a little bit more competitive. Lessons learned.
Yeah, absolutely. No points scored yet, but he, as you said, has been knocking on the door in the last couple of races. And staying out of trouble is as big a part of that as outright pace, I think, sometimes, isn't it? We've seen a few drivers that have been on course for a handful of points and they've got taken out in someone else's incident, or indeed sometimes one of their own making. And likewise, other drivers that have looked into a couple of points. Remember, top 15 finishers in each race score championship points. So you don't have to be setting fastest laps to get good points, although that will get you 1 bonus point in each race if you can set the fastest lap of the race. But yeah, if you can just run a consistent pace and keep it on the black stuff, then you've got every chance of doing well, which actually quite a lot of drivers have done. I was looking at the points tally just now, and we've got only 5 points between the top 2 in the Drivers' Championship, but a race win, which is 20 points, plus a bonus one if you can get fastest lap, covers essentially the better part of the top 10 drivers in the championship. So it is wide open. We've had 4 different winners. 10 different drivers have been on the podium, haven't they? And we've had a different pole sitter after every qualifying so far this year. So it is wide open, and that should give some hope, I think, for those drivers that haven't necessarily hit the ground running, that they can still get up there and have some good results before season's end.
Yeah, those poles, Mike Epps, when they were all ballast free at Brands Hatch, then we had Max Edmondson at Donington and Robbie Stapleford last time out at Alton Park. And of course for race 2 it's your 12th place finisher from the opening race, and a reminder too that the weight you carry is across the meeting. It doesn't change from race 1 to race 2. There just isn't the time within the operation of all of this to start shuffling ballast around, so you carry it for both races. And we were discussing, weren't we, at Alton Park, the problems now that Mike Epps is going to face, because he's scoring well constantly. He's likely to either retain that championship lead or at least drop to second, so he's always going to have a heavy car, and it's a case of managing that weight. Senna Proctor here is somebody that's got to get a bit of a wriggle on in this session. Senna has had a reasonable season with 3 fifth places in terms of best race results. I think he'd like to be on the podium, and it could happen here. But right now, practice times suggesting he's got quite a chunk to find.
Yes, although I don't think Senna Proctor, even with a little bit of weight on the car, is actually 25.5 seconds off the pace at Snetterton. So I don't know how many laps has he done. Let's scroll down the timing sheet. Yeah, he's only done the 5 laps, and some of the drivers are into the 20s, so maybe joined the session a bit late, did Senna Proctor. So yeah, definitely yet to see the best from the Honda Civic, which is making its way up through Coram Corner now. Should have time for another couple of laps in this practice session. I just want to talk about Mike Epps a second, because you said there that he was talking about, or we saw how hard it is to carry the ballast, and when I interviewed him at Alton Park a week ago, he was, I won't say complaining, but he was definitely voicing an opinion that it's so hard to win in this championship with weight, because you have to carry the championship weight across both races, and the weight seems to affect the cars more in the game than it does in the real life. But he seemed to be forgetting the reason I was interviewing him was because he just won a race with maximum championship ballast. So it can be done, and Mike Epps really has proven to be the best at carrying ballast, hasn't he? He has those 2 wins, 1 ballast free and 1 with maximum ballast on board the car, and that is really what's given him the edge, I think, as much as he might like to complain about it from time to time.
Yes, I think when you did interview him and he was complaining about all this ballast, we could hear a virtual violin playing in the background, couldn't we? And lots of people had huge sympathy. Not. We are about 2 3/4 minutes away from practice. Callum Newsham, for the moment, tops the times. We'll see how qualifying pans out, because we're getting ready for that, and that will hit the track very shortly. So, qualifying is underway. Mike Epps, Max Edmondson, Robbie Stapleford, the best qualifiers thus far. Callum Newsham topped practice with the best lap at 1:52.235. That, if you like, is the target as James Merrills ventures out onto the circuit. And they've only got 15 minutes for this session, so it's a short, sharp blast, Andy. And perhaps around here, being at the pointy end, matters rather more than at other places, because it does at least put you, in theory, ahead of any trouble going through that Wilson hairpin on the first lap, for example.
Yeah, there are quite a few pinch points, aren't there, on this circuit, which, on the opening lap in particular, can cause drama. So you want to be as far away from that potential drama as you can be. Qualifying on pole, of course, the best way to do that, and it gets you a nice championship point as well for setting the fastest time in this session. So definitely we'll be seeing some pretty fierce competition. It's a long lap, this. You mentioned this earlier on, nearly 3 miles in length, so they should be able to get their tyres up into the operating window pretty quickly, in that it should only take them 1 or 2 laps, really, whereas at other circuits, Brands Hatch, for example, it was taking them sort of 3, 4, even 5 laps sometimes to find the ultimate pace. The flip side of that is they won't get as many laps in this session because it takes them longer to make it round a lap, and the tyres will only stay in that ideal operating window for so long before they start wearing out. You've got lots of these sort of long, high-speed right-handers, particularly in the final sector. We're seeing Dave Marshall here going through the bomb hole and then into Coram. He'll be going a lot quicker through here when he's on a flying lap, really leaning on that left front tyre. So you've got to take advantage of the tyres being in that window, because they might not stay there for too long.
Yes, also, I think we've lost 1 or 2 from the entry. I can't yet find... Oh, he is there, Charlie Oliver. Yes, he was. I wasn't aware that Charlie was out on practice, but Charlie Oliver is there, 17, so that's one to watch. I think also Craig Keeble is a question mark, and Kat Impey, who, like last week, is having internet dramas once more, sadly. So add in a few new ones, as we've been mentioning. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top of that subordinate class, if you like, of the 3 new drivers with the 45 kilos. Now, Rob Butler, second fastest, half a second down here on James Merrills, but as yet we've not really seen proper lap times. All we've seen is an outlap, so this now is a proper representative effort. Jack Keithley's going to be one to watch as well. Jack, in a sense, needs to have 2 solid runs here, not necessarily do anything sparkling, but just be consistent and up near the front to bank 2 sets of points rather than just 1. He was certainly in the wars a bit at Donington, came back strongly at Alton Park. And Jack Keithley, the Ipswich-based Williams eSports driver, 2 third places. What about the Newshams? They, as we made the point, desperately need some good luck, both of them. The best we've had out of Callum is a 4th, and Dave has had a 9th as his best race result this year. And both have had the potential to do better than that, haven't they?
Getting very, very dangerously close here to putting the mockers on them again, but yes, absolutely.
That's why I passed that to you quickly, you see. I dug myself in enough.
Thanks, David. Much appreciated.
Yeah,
yes, they are working together here in qualifying, aren't they, he says, moving on quickly, which is important at this track. These long straights with the slipstream definitely a factor in qualifying, as I mentioned earlier on. So the 2 Newshams, I think it's Callum in front of a curb-hopping Dave there, going through Brundle and Nelson. So we'll see. They've got themselves some nice clear track apart from that, haven't they? So no traffic to worry about, and hopefully that slipstream down the straights will help them. Fastest lap at the moment set by Isaac Smith, 1:52.4, which is pretty much bang on the practice pace, actually.
Yeah.
Fastest lap in practice was a 52.2, so to my point, again, it's not often I'm right, so I'm going to make the most of this, they are getting straight down to business within their first or second flying laps.
Yeah, and Isaac Smith is ballast free as well, isn't he? So Callum Newsham goes second then as he goes across the line, and Callum Newsham's car carries no weight either. Then Charlie Oliver up to 3rd, Max Edmondson 4th. It's got the makings of a good grid, this. Alex Toft-Jones 5th, who actually, just to make a little point about Alex, was the only driver to have any kind of race penalty subsequent to Alton Park, because he didn't serve his drive-through in the first race because there wasn't time. He had to have that retrospectively added as a 30-second time penalty that cost him some places from the final result of race 1. But actually, we didn't have anything like the same number of protests and driving standards investigations. There was only that 1 penalty that had to be looked at and applied during the week. Alex Toft-Jones, that we saw last year on occasions in the Porsche Sprint Challenge for the fabulous 718 Cayman iteration. Here he is, 5th fastest. Coming whoops all sideways through Brundle and Nelson, the old S's. That was a good save, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and just planted the throttle there, brought the front of the car back around. good car control there. Alex Toth-Jones running well in this session at the moment, 5th fastest, and of course he has now shed his newcomer's or weight, hasn't he? That 45 kilos you have to carry when you're new to the championship, or a late addition to the championship, I should say. And just as I was bigging him up, he dived for the pit lane. Now that's interesting. We haven't seen much of this really in these qualifying sessions, have we? Generally, once the cars are on track, they tend to stay there. Maybe a couple of them will come in and get a new set of tyres just to try, if they've maybe messed up their first run, they know they need to try and improve towards the end. But quite early into this session, we're seeing people coming in for a second set of tyres because the tyres just aren't lasting long enough.
Well, Alex Toth-Jones certainly gave his a big work over at the S's, didn't he? Now, we've got Charlie Oliver up to the top of the times, 152.389, so just a tenth shy of what we had out of Callum Newsham in free practice. But Charlie Oliver has proved in races that he's got good pace with all that string of fastest laps. There is Stuart Lyons, who is 17th at the moment. You've got Newsham Jr. in the pits, Dave Marshall is in, and also Kenny Press is in the pit lane currently as we get to just about the halfway point of the session, just approaching the halfway mark. What about Mike Epps then as he breaks the timing beam now, goes through, he's way back, 20th. This will be worth watching if he has to start from there. You can see him hard at work on the inset picture then as he hustles the car up through Riches on towards the Wilson hairpin. Now he'll stand on the brakes, turn it through the hairpin, but he's got Newsham's, plural, up the road ahead of him that might just get in the way here, and 20th is not where he wants to be.
No, absolutely. He'll, in a way, be hoping to catch them as he goes into the second half of the lap, because then he can tag along with their little slipstreaming exercise, can't he? But he's not really quite close enough to get the benefit from that at the moment. Drops down into Agostini. These are the kind of corners where carrying this weight is just so painful. Look at the way the car squirms around under braking. He can't stop the car as quickly as the lighter cars can, and he can't accelerate the car as quickly as he'd like either, because he's lugging all of this weight around. It doesn't affect the car quite so much through the high-speed corners, I don't think. It's these slow corners with the big braking zones and the big acceleration zones as well. Work the tyres hard, you work the brakes harder. It just makes life much more difficult for you, and in a qualifying session in particular, where you can't use your racecraft to try and overcome any of that weight penalty, it really does seem to be affecting things. He's yet to set a representative lap time, though, definitely 33 seconds off the pace. He can absolutely go quicker than that, but he has left himself with less than half the session now to find a big chunk of time.
And I think he's also, looking at his facial expression, just also cottoned on to the Newshams up the road. So he's thinking, oh, I'm going to get stuck in traffic here if I'm not careful. 6.5 minutes to go. Yes, there is half the session remaining, or just under, but as we keep making the point, it's a long lap. So, yes, there is the time, but there aren't that many laps, and that's what he needs right now as he comes down towards the completion of a lap, up towards the timing line. Oliver Smith, Newsham Jr., Edmondson, Proctor, Toth-Jones, Butler, Brennan, Keithley, Zelos is the top 10. And as Mike Epps comes through, what has that lap done? Well, it's hauled him halfway up the order pretty much. He's now 11th, so even though there's still traffic up the road and it hasn't put him anywhere near the front, it has certainly kicked him up the grid a fair old chunk, and significantly has put him ahead of championship rival Dave Marshall.
Yeah, Mike Epps in practice did a 153.0, so he is, doing some quick math, not far off that actually, is he? So that's probably pretty close to what his actual pace could be. How's Jordan Brennan getting on then? 8th quickest at the moment, just under 0.6 of a second away from pole position, which is still held by Charlie Oliver. And so Charlie Oliver is looking for his first pole position. So at the moment we're on course to keep this run of different pole position winners at every round going. Jordan Brennan also has yet to have a pole position, and Brennan is looking around a little bit of weight at the moment, but certainly you'd expect it to be a bit quicker than this. Traffic up the road, that's Cat Impey, I think, isn't it, who has now made it into the session, so that's good news. Up to 23 cars that have made it out onto the circuit. Brennan comes across the start-finish line then, still looking for his first podium of the year as well, which you could argue is a long time coming. Moves up one position into 7th place, but stays provisionally on the 4th row of the grid.
A long way back, though. Max Bird, Max Goff, Dave Newsham, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, which doesn't sound right, does it? They ought to be a lot higher up than that. Max Bird only has 15 kilos, Max Goff 33, Dave Newsham weight-free. So I think there's going to be another shuffle to the grid before we get to the end of the session. That said, the end of the session is imminent. David Ward, newcomer, he's 15th, make that 12th. Good effort this, isn't it? So with 45 kilos of newcomer's weight, he is working his way up the grid. Max Bird comes through, and is that going to be an improvement for him? Should have been, but no, he is still only to be found 22nd. But Dave Newsham goes now 9th, and that pushes Max Bird down to 23rd. So the Maxes, 23rd and 24th now. Bird and Goff, both with work to do.
Yeah, I think Dave Newsham's problem that he was having lap times disallowed because of track limits. I did notice when he was chasing down his son earlier on in the session, he looked like he was on a decent lap, then ran a bit wide out of Nelson, and that possibly led to a lap time being deleted. So now he's got a lap in, he's got that banker lap done, if you like. He can now get his head down and try to go a bit quicker. Jack McIntyre on screen now, getting a bit further down than you might expect, in 16th position. McIntyre in the Honda, working his way out onto the back straight. Speed starts to build now. Nice livery on this car, isn't it? A nice line there, right up to the edge of the track, as he rockets now down the Bentley straight at the top of the times. Still, though, Charlie Oliver cannot be beaten. Isaac Smith less than half a tenth behind, with Callum Newton up in 3rd, Max Edmondson 4th, Senna Proctor 5th. And as you said, the championship contenders struggling a bit. Mike Epps is only 13th. Dave Marshall is actually ahead of Epps, interestingly. So Dave Marshall, who he struggled in qualifying last week, didn't he? He's still not setting the timing sheets alight, but he is at least, at the moment, set to start ahead of the championship leader.
Yes, that's been a recent change, hasn't it, that Marshall's got himself up ahead of Epps. Jack McIntyre, that we've been watching, Jack Mack, he's another of the newcomers, currently 3rd in the Mini eSeries, but he's new to this and having to carry the newcomers 45 kilos. Robbie Stapleford, who was on pole and had a win at Alton Park, is only 15th, and he's got 48 kilos in the Soul Cupra on the grid. Still Charlie Oliver then tops the times, 2.5 minutes to go, so there's time, depending on where you are on the track, for a lap and a bit more, so 2 laps. But Robbie Stapleford, 15th, needs to get a wriggle on. Max Bird is still the one, and also Max Goff, another, that need to find something. And Max Bird is in the pit lane, suggesting, well, he's just left the pits, he might squeeze one more lap out of this, but going to be touch and go. And I'm intrigued to know why they're struggling, the two Maxes, because they've had decent pace at previous rounds. Right, Max Goff now goes 17th. That's a bit more like it, but they're both leaving it very late in the session before being able to find the times, aren't they?
Yeah, and just because you can get around to start a lap doesn't necessarily mean, especially if you're fresh from the pit lane, that you'll have your tyres where you need them either. So, yeah, a few drivers are leaving this right to the last second. Robbie Stapleford providing us with a graphic illustration, of how hard it is to carry the ballast. As you said, pole position a week ago, and definitely not this week. It was, I think, Mick Sutton was that I saw getting sideways just behind him, so he ain't going to be improving anytime soon. What can Stapleford do, though? Drops down through Brundle and Nelson. Really tricky sequence of corners, that. Braking on a turn, and it's bumpy, and then you've got to change direction for the right-hander. And out through the bomb hole and Coram once again. 15th place then for Stapleford. Realistically, if he can bring another 10th or 2 out of it, he could move up a couple of rows on the grid, couldn't he? It's very, very tightly bunched as usual throughout the midfield. At the front, though, Charlie Oliver has extended his margin now. A new fastest lap of the session, 152.187. What was half a tenth between himself and Isaac Smith is now a quarter of a second. Stapleford crosses the line, and it's no improvement. He's 1.2 seconds off the pace there. Stays down in 15th place.
So Charlie Oliver's time, best of the day, quicker than Callum Newsham went in practice. Callum is 3rd, Isaac Smith 4th in the practice session, 2nd currently in qualifying. There's now less than a lap time left in the session. Jack Keithley you're looking at there in the red, white and blue Audi, the Williams eSports driver, making the run up towards the Wilson hairpin. It's Charlie Oliver up the road ahead, so the two Audis have got themselves together. And there's traffic up the road yet still, so I rather fear this is not going to be an improvement. Senna Proctor has called it a session. He's pitted, so has Max Edmondson. So they are provisionally 4th and 5th. But right now, it looks as though Charlie Oliver, as Andy makes the point, is going to be yet another new driver to claim a pole position. And he's bailed out of this lap, hasn't he? Because he can't improve. There's traffic all around. And so Charlie Oliver, with a 1/5 of a second over this man, Isaac Smith, provisionally looks as though pole position is his, because the checkered flag is out. We get Cat Impey improving up to 19th at the very end. But Max Bird coming up from 24th, unless he can be a real hero on the last lap. So keep an eye on that timing tower to see whether or not suddenly it shuffles, whether Max Bird is going to be able to put in a better lap. He's still out there as far as I'm aware, but it has been a disappointing session for him, that is for sure. Max Goff was the other one leaving it late. He is 14th. And Isaac Smith with a big slide going into corner, which he kind of caught. He's having a real old tag snapper all the way through the corner. I think we might leave him to that as we focus on Callum Newsham. So Isaac Smith ain't going to be an improver on his last lap. What about Callum Newsham then? He's 3/10 off Charlie Oliver. If he can find those, he of course will go top. He'll also go quicker than he went in the practice session. And heading up towards the end of the lap, Callum Newsham currently third. Isaac Smith ends up second, heading for the pit lane after his slide. So far, so good for Charlie Oliver with 2/10 in hand.
Yeah, and the next two cars in front, look, are Mike Epps and Dave Marshall, teammates working together in the slipstream. And if Dave Newsham's getting a whiff of that slipstream, Callum Newsham, excuse me, that will help him down the back straight. Nice and neat and tidy through Brundle and Nelson. So these are three cars here, all of whom want to improve for slightly different reasons. Newsham because he still has a shot at the front row. Marshall and Epps because from a championship perspective they'd really rather not be starting 11th and 13th respectively. Epps will be the first of these three drivers to see the start finish line, but he's dragging his teammate Dave Marshall around. They're both now outside the top 10 though because Max Bird has improved. Dave Newsham goes through into 7th as well, and all three of those cars I was getting excited about bailed for the pit lane, but we did see some improvements there, David, then notably from Max Bird. His one proper lap of the session gets him at the moment into the top 10.
It does. So he left it late, but it has worked for him. So yes, Max Bird goes 10th. That puts Mick Sutton to the foot of the times. But excellent effort by Charlie Oliver. As we've been saying, he's been one of the stars of races in terms of fastest lap pace. Now he's done it in qualifying. And it's time, I think, that Andy had a word with our new driver for pole position, Charlie Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, David. Charlie Oliver then, brilliant effort there in that qualifying session. A really fast lap, and it looked as though you probably had enough for pole anyway, but then you went out there and went about 2/10 better. Really impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, guys. I mean, the biggest thing today, as often is with touring cars, is the traffic. And to be honest, I thought there was a little bit more, actually. I didn't think it was maybe the maximum, but it was enough for today. But yeah, you end up stuck behind someone who's also on a hot lap, so they're not going to yield to you. So you just have to find your space and try the best you can.
Well, yeah, your best, as it happened, was quite a bit better than anyone else could manage. But how do you now translate that from qualifying pace into race pace? Because that's a whole different story, isn't it?
It is for sure, and on the race simulation runs, the tyres have been a bit sketchy, to be honest. Like, we're struggling for grip towards the end, and I just got to manage that, try and get a good start, keep it clean, keep it out of trouble, and just keep it smooth, really. That's the main thing, just to keep it tidy.
Easy as that, eh, Charlie? Well, best of luck. You're starting from the best possible position. We know you've got the pace to do it. Let's see if you can go ahead and get that first victory of the season.
Thank you. Hope so. Now, listen, guys, I don't know if you can check this, but just to make sure I'm in the right channel for the race so I can hear all the information.
That is above my pay grade, but I can get someone to look into that for you,
Okay.
Charlie, no problem.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
No worries. There we go then. Even seconds before the race starts, David, he's worrying about being in the right radio channel, which is not that dissimilar, I suppose, to the real world thing. Pole position for Charlie Oliver. Can he convert that now to a victory and become the 5th different winner from 7 races?
I'm tempted to say the answer to that question is going to be a yes, because he's got really good pace. However, as we have seen, life is never that straightforward in this championship. So we are set to go racing as the grid is formed, intriguingly, with pole position on the outside. So that is not like you would find in the real world. And also, they've lined them up not as a 1x1 grid as we've had at other venues, but as the 2x2. So pole position on the outside of the road, which is where you find Charlie Oliver then going into this first of our 2 races, with the last handful of cars at the very back into place. Everybody's on the server. Now, look for those red lights, because when they come on, that's going to be our final few seconds of countdown. And everybody then getting themselves set. But yes, pole position at Snetterton is the inside, but the way that the platform here is set up, it is putting pole position on the outside, which you could argue is better because it might be where there is more grip. But coming across the line quite often, you find yourself up near the pit wall having to try to defend and block off an attack on the inside line down to turn 1. So Charlie Oliver's pole might not be quite as good as he thought, and as I say, it's a 2x2 grid for a change here as well, something that we've not had at previous races. So have we got time to play pick a winner? Who's it going to be, Andy?
There's one driver I really want to say, and I'm not brave enough, so I'm going to go with Senna Proctor. You said that, not me. Senna Proctor from row number 2. Another driver, really. It's about time we saw him at least on the podium, maybe get a race win.
I just think, given how he went at Donington, that Isaac Smith is pretty menacing, starting on the now inside of that front row of the grid. Remember, he was our first double winner of the season, absolutely dominated Donington Park, so I think he could be the dark horse here. 1 minute to go to the start then, 1 minute to go, and I think everybody is on the grid, so it's Charlie Oliver on pole position, Isaac Smith alongside Callum Newsham on the second row, with Senna Proctor for company. The third row, Max Edmondson on the outside, Rob Butler on the in. Dave Newsham is on row 4 with Alex Toth-Jones. Row 5 is Jordan Brennan and Max Bird ahead of Jack Keithley and then Dave Marshall. Jack McIntyre and Dan Zelos come next, ahead of Mike Epps and Max Goff, with David Ward, Robbie Stapleford next. James Merrills has Martin Richards, who you can see on the inset shot for company. And then behind that, there is Matt Impey and Kenny Press, with Stuart Lyons and Mick Sutton completing the grid. That then is how they line up. This is race 7 of the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing, powered by VRRC. The drivers are ready, so are we. The lights are all red. When the lights go out, it's going to be blast off any second now. Good getaway by Oliver, and he's just going to outdrag Isaac Smith on the run up towards Riches for the first time. Callum Newsham goes third, moves across the front of Senna Proctor then on the way down towards turn 1. Smith has a look to the inside. Oliver chops off his nose as they get through the right-hander, but Smith keeps on coming. He's going to have the inside line heading up to the Wilson hairpin. Callum Newsham is on the inside as well, hanging on to third. Max Edmondson goes wide. Smith leads. Smith goes wide. First, second, and down to third in one easy manoeuvre. And Charlie Oliver is back up into the race lead. Others stop mowing the lawn on the exit of turn 2. This is turn 3 for the first lap, and Charlie Oliver is in the lead.
Oh, Senna Proctor tangled there, I think, with Isaac Smith, did he not, as he went through Palmer's, bounces on the grass, and as he comes back on, there's chaos, and of course Dave Newsham's involved. Senna Proctor spins across the grass. There's another car that was pointing the wrong way too. That might have been Rob Butler, I think, in the number 74 car. Senna Proctor has rejoined, but I think some drivers may have opinions on his rejoin from the grassy moment he was suffering there. I'm not entirely sure how he got there in the first place, but certainly didn't appear to be using his mirrors as he bounced his way back onto the road. And the luckless Dave Newsham was the one, I think, that came out worse from that. The safety car is being deployed, so Charlie Oliver's race lead, which at the moment looked like it was under a bit of threat from Callum Newsham, he'll be able to hold on to a little more easily now. But that is such a shame for the driver I most definitely did not tip for the race win, Senna Proctor, who is, although still running, certainly further back than he should be, and possibly might have a conversation to have with the clerk of the course afterwards.
So Dave Newsham came off worse, you reckon? Surprised face. Right, Charlie Oliver then leads the way. Safety car had been deployed, but that legend's now gone off the screen. So let's just double check whether that is going to be activated at the end of this lap. I think it may have been rescinded. Let's have a check as they come across the line, because as they come through, can't see the safety car up the road. We are still on green, so safety car not deployed. I think everybody did get going. The safety car really is used to try and bring people back into contention rather than them disconnecting. It's not to do with the track blockage, for example. So at the end of the lap, Charlie Oliver leads by over a second. Callum Newsham is second ahead of Isaac Smith, recovering from his moment here a lap ago. Fourth is Max Edmondson. Jordan Brennan is fifth. It's Max Bird sixth ahead of Senna Proctor, Dave Marshall, Jack Keithley and Dan Zelos. Mike Epps has just gone up into 13th place. Points in the top 15, don't forget. So Epps has left himself with a lot of work to do. Dave Newsham is down in 22nd trying to recover, and Rob Butler is another man trying to carve his way back up the order too.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Epps did well to avoid some of that chaos halfway around the first lap, didn't he? Robbie Stapleford coming up the inside of Jack McIntyre as well. Stapleford, remember, is now 4th in the championship after that win he had at Alton Park. So that orange Cupra, the only Cupra on the grid, is keen to try and latch on to Mike Epps' rear bumper, I think, and work through the field with him. Up towards Oggies they go. This is Jack Keithley defending from a pair of Peugeots, Max Goff and Rob Butler. Butler was one of those, as I said, that tangled with Proctor and Newsham on the first lap, and it's Butler that is now in 12th position with Mike Epps right behind him, then Robbie Stapleford. Of the championship contenders, Dave Marshall's the one that has survived that first lap the best, hasn't he? He's in 8th position right now, so as things stand, he would either be tied with or 1 point either side of Mike Epps in the championship. So that is a pretty tasty prospect as we head towards the middle part of the season. But there is still a lot that can shake out from this. No one is really escaping from each other in the midfield, so plenty more positional changes still to come, I think.
Yes, as it stands, yes, with a race and 3/4 of the day still to go. A lot could happen, I totally agree. It's going to make the championship situation fascinating, but the chances of things not changing over the course of the day, we'll discuss. Charlie Oliver leading the way. Now, is that gap going up or coming down? The answer with now 2 laps in the book is that Newsham is catching him. Callum Newsham is getting a little bit closer, taking Isaac Smith with him. Max Edmondson is 4th. Now, that is 5th. Jordan Brennan, he's not close enough to attack Max Edmondson for the moment, although Edmondson in turn has got a bit stuck. But Brennan, Bird and Proctor getting themselves together all in a group. 5th, 6th and 7th. Rob Butler gets run out wide at Wilson and falls back into 13th place, and Mike Epps is chipping his way forward. We've had a pit stop from Alex Toth-Jones with damage at the end of the opening lap. But Charlie Oliver then trying to stretch that lead once again. Look back from Max Bird's car then. Senna Proctor closing up onto him as they turn into Agostini, but he brakes late. And by the time he's got the car slowed down, Max Bird, of course, quicker, earlier on the power, pulls away coming out the other side of the corner.
Yeah, this group of cars all caught Jordan Brennan because he had a big moment coming out of Murray's, the final corner, walloped the curb, got very sideways, almost lost it, and that's why the Golfers fallen back into the clutches now of the pair of Civics behind. Senna Proctor chasing down Max Bird, as we said. Then it's Dave Marshall who's caught them too. In the next pack, we have Epps, Goff and Stapleton, who are also quick drivers, so I expect that group to catch this one and give us an almighty battle for the positions towards the back of the top 10. It's all rather allowing the top 4 to break clear though. Charlie Oliver and Callum Newsham pretty much matching each other at the moment, getting away from Isaac Smith and Max Edmondson, so they're sort of pairing off at the sharp end, and then everybody else trying to be 5th really. This big group of cars likely to get even bigger as the laps wind down. Like Epps, we can see here in 11th place with Max Goff now splitting Epps and Stapleford. Stapleford did come through ahead of Goff, but I think Goff has clearly found a way back through again later on in the lap. Then it's Martin Richards who is up on 2 wheels over the curb, whilst the final point right now would go to Rob Butler, another driver really that could do with some more points. He had that win at Brands Hatch, but hasn't been back on the podium since then, and sadly the podium doesn't look like beckoning in this race at least. Perhaps in race 2 then, when we have that top 12 grid reversal, that could save his day.
Battle is on though for the race lead. That gap has been coming down and down, and in fact now Callum Newsham has got himself up past Isaac Smith for 2nd place anyway, as we saw earlier, and has chipped away enough I think to be a real contender now. So Charlie Oliver versus Callum Newsham. Isaac Smith is there or thereabouts in 3rd place, but being caught in turn by Max Edmondson. Now actually the gap, having said it had come down, has stretched slightly on this lap. We had it down to 3/10 a few corners back, but Charlie Oliver getting on with the job once again, trying to extend that margin. But Callum Newsham here sensing the opportunity to put in his best result of the year. Meantime, Rob Butler is under attack from Martin Richards, the Drift King. Then behind him, Jack McIntyre in the blue car. David Ward, another of the newcomers, rounds next in 17th. But Oliver trying now to stretch that margin to over a second. Max Bird in the meantime squabbling with Senna Proctor, and so has lost that 6th place. Senna Proctor moves himself through and of course is making amends for all his dramas on the opening lap. That said, Max Bird tries to fight back. Dave Marshall is up with them, outscoring Mike Epps, and if he can get past these two, that would do championship hopes a power of good. He's taking Dan Zelos with him as well. Dan Zelos, another of the newcomers for the 2 races today. So Max Bird attacking Proctor and trying to defend from Marshall, who in turn is trying to keep Zelos at bay.
Yeah, Dan Zelos running really well, isn't he, with those 45 kilos on the car in his first appearance in the championship. So we should expect nothing less really from Dan, who has proven himself in the real world as a really good front-wheel drive racer, and rear-wheel drive of course back in his Ginetta days, but through his competition in Clios and Minis after that, he has proven that he's got to grips with front-wheel drive too. Dave Marshall would like to get past these 2 Hondas, but he needs to be careful about it. They've already driven into each other twice on the previous lap when Proctor got past Bird at this corner, the Wilson hairpin, a lap ago. There was a bit of door banging, and then at the next corner Bird repaid the favour. So teammates they may be, but they're definitely comfortable running each other very, very close on the track. Proctor is now getting away though, because Bird is sort of watching his mirrors more than he's focusing on hitting his apexes and carrying the speed that Proctor is doing. So Marshall, Zelos and Jack Keithley all starting to group together behind, and this really is where the championship story is, isn't it? Because you've got Marshall, you've got Keithley, Epps is closing in as well. Stapleford as well in 13th, isn't he? So the top 4 drivers in the championship are all about to get themselves pretty much together within this battle pack.
They are indeed. At the tail end, it is Stuart Lyons who's fallen back behind Alex Toth-Jones despite ATJ making his pit stop earlier on. His next target is going to be the car of Mick Sutton. Craig Keeble, who I was getting concerned about earlier on, has made it. He has joined in, so he started from the very back of the grid and is there already up into 22nd, having missed practice and I think missed qualifying as well. However, he battles on, and as we approach the halfway point, Charlie Oliver's advantage is not really getting much bigger, is it? It's hovering around this half a second mark. Callum Newsham trying to stay with him, but in turn I think has shaken off Isaac Smith, so Callum now can concentrate on attacking. Does that mean he's not going to get annihilated by anybody else trying anything behind? Because that's been the Newsham luck, really, that they've been involved, both Callum and his father Dave, in other people's incidents on more than one occasion. We will see, because as the leaders go by on that last lap, Callum Newsham fractionally faster than the race leader, so that brings the gap down to less than ever now, 0.297, then up to 0.3 of a second as they go down towards turn 1 at Riches. But certainly Newsham is trying everything he can now. There they are, look, at Wilson Hairpin. He's late on the brakes. Is he going to be able to stay tight to the back of Oliver as they go down towards turn 3 here?
Well, this is really interesting, actually, isn't it? Because Callum Newsham, one of his problems has been getting involved in accidents, but the other one seems to be keeping the tyres alive. We've seen on a number of occasions, haven't we, that he will start the race really well, he qualifies well, the first few laps go quite well, if he stays on the track, but then he seems to fade in the second half. Now, I wonder whether he has tweaked his setup with that in mind for this week's races, because, as we said, we know Snetterton is going to work those front tyres pretty hard. He's been working the front tyres perhaps harder than other drivers have anyway. A sensible driver would have spent the week since Oulton Park working on maybe a race setup rather than a single lap setup, and now we're seeing him getting stronger as the race goes on rather than struggling more and more. So that might well be what's happened here. If he survives and takes a podium, I'll ask him about it in his post-race interview. Meanwhile, Jack Keithley here on the tail of Dan Zelos. Dan's dropped back from Mike Epps all of a sudden, so whether he's had a moment or maybe had a go at getting past Epps that hasn't worked, either way, Keithley in the Audi, he's ahead of Epps, it's the other Peugeot I'm thinking of, isn't it, of Dave Marshall, Epps' teammate. Keithley is now up the inside of Dan Zelos, who successfully defends the place. Mike Epps in the blue Peugeot is right behind them, followed by Max Goff and Robbie Stapleford. This is all getting very tight, and it's one of those sort of pressure cooker battles that the championship leader would probably rather not be a part of.
Indeed so. We could have another one of those before much longer for the race lead, because look at this as they head up towards the line. Callum Newsham then goes to the outside line. It's a virtual dead heat as they go over the timing line. Newsham just with his nose in front. He hits the front and he gets the job done. Going into Riches, Callum Newsham then round the outside, got a toe, gets the race lead, and Callum Newsham then takes over the race lead ahead of Charlie Oliver. Now, can Oliver fight back? They're absolutely nose to tail going into Wilson. We've got 8 minutes and change on the clock, plus the regulation lap at the end, but a new race leader. Callum Newsham has hit the front. Now, could this be the race in which finally the bad luck stays clear of him? Let's see. Down they come then, heading towards Agostini. Oliver second, and then there's a big gap that has opened up before Isaac Smith runs third. Edmondson is still fourth, fifth Brennan, sixth Proctor. Two race leaders as one, and Oliver, even though he's lost the race lead, is not giving up without a fight.
No, Callum Newsham there, that was seriously impressive speed down the pit straight. The Hyundai i30N is known for being good in a straight line, and certainly that seemed to be carried over into the sim there, didn't it? Because that was a seriously strong run down the straight. Let's ride on board with Oliver here down the Bentley straight. Let's see if it's the same story now that he is the one with the slipstream. Can he close in on the Hyundai? No, he can't. Look at that. Callum Newsham continues to get away from him. Charlie Oliver is running with 9 kilos compared to Callum Newsham, who has no ballast, but I doubt that's making much difference. And indeed on the brakes, where you'd really expect that to count, Oliver closes in. I just don't think he can live with the straight line performance of the Hyundai, which is now starting ever so slightly to break away. Oliver needs to stay in that slipstream, doesn't it, to try and at least limit the damage being done down the long straights, and maybe have a go in the middle sector through that infield. That might be his chance to get back at Callum Newsham. Callum's been in front for a lap now. He'll be getting into a rhythm. He is starting to stretch away again as they go across the start-finish line onto another lap. So Callum Newsham is looking good at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, but look at the way that Oliver ran through Coram there. He brought the gap right down. Trouble was, by the time he'd done that, then he had to stand on the anchors, so he washed out just a little and lost a length or two. But certainly, Charlie Oliver ain't giving up. Over the line then, that now puts 7 laps in the book. You're looking at Robbie Stapleford going through in 13th place. He is looking for a way past Goff. He's trying to keep Butler at bay as well. Ahead of all of them there, Mike Epps running 11th. Championship rival Dave Marshall 8th. So to the abacus we must go at the end of this to see how this is all going to shuffle things around. For the race lead, 6/10 then between Callum Newsham and Charlie Oliver as Jack McIntyre there. He's attacked in the background by Dave Ward. David Ward on the inside at Wilson. And has he gone through? Yes, he has, up into 16th place. There they are. Jack Mack fights back, but David Ward in the black Honda Civic just able to fend him off. Now, Oliver, half a second back from Newsham, just under 6 minutes, plus the regulation lap remain. Behind Jack McIntyre now is Dave Newsham, still outside the points, but trying to recover after his dramas from that section of circuit on the opening lap of the race as they wriggle up through the infield now.
I don't have an abacus, David, but I do have a point spreadsheet, which ultimately I think I trust a little bit more. And at the moment, as it stands, Epps would retain the points lead by just 2 points. It would be 81 for Epps, 79 for Dave Marshall. So Marshall needs to get another position or two if he wants to snatch the points lead away, especially considering he'll probably be starting behind Epps in the next race with that reverse grid. Epps at the moment will be on the front row, wouldn't he, with Max Goff provisionally on course for race 2 pole position. Jack McIntyre about to have company from Newsham Senior, isn't he? Dave Newsham in the Hyundai is now right behind him, looking to try and use that potential straight line speed advantage to grab another place. At the head of the field, though, moving into the final quarter of the race now, and Newsham Junior is not really getting away by much more, is he? On the previous lap, well, just under 1/10 of a second quicker than Charlie Oliver, but Oliver is close enough that if Newsham were to make a mistake, he could definitely pounce. The gap's still less than a second at the moment.
It is, although it has widened. Now, is that Callum Newsham now starting to break Charlie Oliver, or is it Charlie just letting the tyres cool and recover for a lap and then have one last push? He might be keeping an eye to the clock as there's a bit on the inside line. Dave Marshall to the inside of Max Bird gains the place that you were talking about, whereas Mike Epps is closing. Mike might gain ground before the very end as well. He's got Goff and Stapleford behind him. He might lose as much as he might gain because you've got a long line of cars developing now. But Dave Marshall, despite 66 kilos of weight, briefly up into 7th place. Can he hang on to it? Well, he's 8th now. He's back on the outside line for Agostini, but I don't think he's going to go all the way around the outside of Max Bird. Let's see. Bird gets his nose in front. Is he going to be able to hang on in there? The road should come to him, but then Dave Marshall way up the curb will have the inside line for the next corner, and now he's got the place, and Robbie Stapleford's going to go through as well. Is this going to end in tears? It almost does. Keithley has the door wide open ahead of him. Jack Keithley pounces. He's got past 1. Now he's going to try and get past 2. So Dave Marshall is up into 7th. Yes, Keithley goes 8th. What about 9th? Zelos, then Bird. Epps is still 11th, but not for long.
Yeah, Mike Epps wants to get involved in this, especially because he can see Marshall getting away, but he knows that that could easily go wrong, and now he's got Max Goff up the inside. 5 cars going into Brundle and Nelson. Will they all come out the other side? No, it's Epps that gets sideways. Oh no, Mike Epps makes contact. Off the road goes Max Bird. Now Epps gained a couple of positions out of that, but he got a bit sideways going through Brundle and clattered into the side of the Honda, and that might, for the first time potentially this season, get Mike Epps in a bit of trouble. Max Goff, meanwhile, has just managed to get himself back to the front of the group. Brilliant driving that from Max Goff. Epps has settled in 10th, but Robbie Stapleford now moves up to challenge, and Epps suddenly finds himself under pressure. 2 orange cars swarming around him. Already, Stapleford's gone through. Dan Zelos goes ahead as well, and now Rob Butler moves up to try and challenge his fellow Peugeot driver. Into Riches they go. Stapleford defending from Goff. Epps successfully defending, for the time being at least, from Rob Butler. That will change the championship scores around again, but that was really the first bit of proper fisticuffs that we've seen Epps getting involved in, hasn't it? Isn't it, so far this season? And well, he did not come out of it that well.
And he's getting involved with Dan Zelos, who also got caught up in that melee at the old S's. Now look, Epps is on the bubble here. He's 12th. Gets sideways with a bit of help from Rob Butler, but this could be the difference between the 7th row or the front row, because now look, he's down to 13th, so no longer can he benefit from that reverse grid. So 12th he was, that would have been pole. Now he's 13th. Now he's going to lose even more ground, I fear, going down towards Agostini. So Mike Epps has gone off the road, and he may have disconnected actually because he's quickly come up as a DNF. So Mike Epps, having fallen out of the top 12, looks as though he is disconnected because he's tumbling down the order. It says DNF next to his name. So Rob Butler for pole position, the reverse grid winner at Brands Hatch, and suddenly drama for the championship. Mike Epps dropping down and down and down the field, and now being shown as a DNF.
Well, before that DNF, he and Marshall would have been tied for the championship lead, but of course Marshall now is going to take that championship lead because Epps will not score, so that is going to be potentially really significant for the championship. Another driver to keep your eye on, by the way, and I hesitate to say this because he's doing quite well again, Dave Newsham is knocking on the door of that reverse grid pole again, isn't he? 15th place at the moment, but because of all of the chaos, quite frankly, that just broke out in front of him, he's not that far behind the next pack. He goes up the inside of Ward now and makes contact with him. What have I done? Gets sideways through Coram, loses a place again now to Jack McIntyre. Forget I ever said anything, David.
We don't learn, do we? We keep being told, don't mention the Newshams. Yet. You started it. Dave Newsham then, up and down the order, yet again. He's almost in the points. Let's be positive here. He's about to get past Jack Mack on the outside line. Jack McIntyre goes down towards Riches then with this lap and the regulation lap to go. Newsham has done it. He's round the outside. And the next car up the road, he ought to be able to catch and pass because David Ward has got 45 kilos of extra weight in there. So he should be able to find a way through, especially as David has just gone wide. So Ward runs wide at Wilson. Meantime, Callum Newsham, still whisper it, leads the race. Charlie Oliver is second. Isaac Smith is third. Brennan, Edmondson, Proctor, Marshall, Keithley, Goff, Staple for the top 10. And Epps did disconnect. He's out of the race and he will go from the very back of race 2. That's going to be fascinating, isn't it? Flat last, full weight. Can't wait to see what he can do from there.
Yeah, well, he's going to really have to pull something special out of the bag, isn't he? Because he's not going to benefit from that reverse grid at all now, whereas his championship rivals very much will. Back on board with Dave Newsham then. We're back behind David Ward again now. This would be for 14th place, but they have, frustratingly for both of the Daves, dropped away now, haven't they, to the tune of 2.5 seconds or so from the group in front, and we're into the closing stages of the race now. There is the group in front, who of course could still delay each other further before the race is over. Zelos looking to try and get into the top 10 on his debut in the championship. Pulls to the outside of Robbie Stapleford through Brundle and Nelson. Can he get himself the inside for the right-hander? He cannot, so they stay in the same positions with Rob Butler and Martin Richards right behind. Gap at the front, David, was coming down halfway around that lap, but it looks like Newsham is getting away again.
Well, let's see, because we are now on to the last lap of the race. It is now or never as far as Charlie Oliver is concerned. That's the battle you're looking at in the inset picture. On track, Dan Zelos, he's trying to attack Robbie Stapleford, keep Rob Butler at bay. And they come through to start the last lap. Dave Newsham is 14th, heading the next train of cars. Now that's for the race lead at Wilson. Look, the gap has come right down under braking. Can Charlie Oliver have one last roll of the dice here? Into turn 3 then, less than a lap to go. Newsham looks the stronger of the two, but let's see, has Charlie Oliver got anything in reserve? Can he force a mistake out of Callum Newsham here? So down they come into Agostini, but Newsham it is that hangs on, at least for the moment.
It's this middle sector where the Audi is strong, though. This gap was 7, nearly 8 tenths at the line. It's down to under 4 now. The Audi just seems to have more grit, better acceleration maybe, although not so much on the grass coming out of Hamilton. Actually didn't slow Oliver down, really, did it? And he's right behind Callum Newsham. In fact, he's looking up the inside as they head towards the right-hander onto the Bentley straight. He goes for it. Charlie Oliver going for the race lead, side by side, leans on the Hyundai, which is out over the grass, and Callum Newsham is going to lose the lead halfway around the final lap. But now we're into the part of the lap where the Hyundai is quick. It's got the straight line speed down the Bentley straight. He's got the inside line for Brundle. That will be the outside for Nelson, though. This could so easily go wrong. Charlie Oliver sends it round the outside, gets the lead back again, but compromises his line through the right-hander. Callum Newsham back up the inside into the bomb hole. Terrific racing. The Hyundai goes back ahead but runs wide. Oliver back up the inside again. This is 4 or 5 lead changes in half a lap, and with 1 corner to go, it's the Audi back in front.
But only just, and it's now or never. Newsham needs a good run out of here to get the drag up towards the line, but I don't think he's quite close enough. Now let's see, can he get a tow? He's running out of straight. Checker flag at the ready then. Charlie Oliver is going to score a win because Callum Newsham is not going to be able to pounce in time. Through they go. Charlie Oliver wins then. Another new winner. You've got to feel for Callum Newsham after all of that, but a brilliant last lap by Charlie Oliver to come through to win the race then. Callum Newsham second. Isaac Smith takes third. Fourth across the line is going to be Jordan Brennan ahead of Max Edmondson, then Senna Proctor. 7th is Dave Marshall, great for the championship with the non-score for Mike Epps. 8th, Jack Keithley. 9th, Max Goff. Robbie Stapleford 10th ahead of Dan Zelos, and Rob Butler 12th is going to get pole position for race 2. Martin Richards, Dave Newsham and David Ward round out the point scorers. Wow, what a last lap, what a race, and what a drive from Charlie Oliver to score the race win. There is the provisional result. Charlie Oliver the winner from Callum Newsham and then Isaac Smith. It's Jordan Brennan 4th ahead of Max Edmondson, Senna Proctor 6th, Dave Marshall, Jack Keithley, Max Goff and Robbie Stapleford round out the top 10. And Andy has made his way to the interview room where we can hear not just from our pole man now, but for the first time in the championship, a race winner, and that's Charlie Oliver.
Well, Charlie, I said jokingly at the start that you were making your plan for that race sound relatively easy, but easy is not a word I think we can use to describe your race win. What a race, what a battle.
Yeah, I think you could say that. I mean, it was so tough. I'm sweating buckets. Yeah, we were quite quick on the start. Then Callum, I think it's Callum, right? I was fighting with. He's just so fast down the straight, and he passed me, as you saw. And then I thought maybe we can get him again, but in the end, just last lap, I thought there was a chance. You know, you work out where you're quick, where you're slow. I thought there was a chance at that corner, and just made it.
It was all about the exit, wasn't it? The tight right-hander at Oggies. You seem to have a better front-end grip. Maybe the Audi was saving its tyres a bit better. That got you the inside line, and then you knew, didn't you, really, that you had to strike then. If you didn't get in front before that long back straight, that was probably it. Yeah.
I mean, I want to say as well, there's somebody who came into my life recently who made a difference, who probably is owed a lot of credit. She knows who she is for this one. But that aside, yeah, it was a nice move. I enjoyed it. I just want to thank the principal sponsor as well, Go Bobby UK. They've been fantastic, and yeah, we wouldn't be where we are without them.
Oh, nicely done. I'm sure they really appreciate not only the result, but the show that you just put on for them. They got plenty of TV time, that's for sure. Charlie, well done, and best of luck now from 12th on the grid in race 2.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Charlie Oliver then gets himself that first win. It's his 3rd podium of the season, though, and he is slowly starting to creep up the championship order. Now, this is an interview I'm not particularly looking forward to. Callum Newsham, let's start with the good news. It's your first podium of the season, and that in and of itself has been a long time coming, but it should have been a win, shouldn't it?
Yes, hi. Yeah, a bit gutted about that, but, you know, Charlie's rapid all race. I think you just made him, he struggled out of the last corner, so I, passed him down the straight, so yeah, got a good exit, and then yeah.
And then the rest was history, as they say. You had a terrific side-by-side battle to the line. I know you came off second best, but those are the kind of battles, aren't they, that you racing drivers really do enjoy?
Yeah, we love good, clean racing. So yeah, I'm not going to complain about that.
Well, you're starting 11th now for race 2. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just see what we can do. Hopefully get back up the top again.
Absolutely, that is the plan. Anyway, we know the car's quick round here, and you're not carrying any weight, so that should be possible, as long as you stay out of trouble at the start of the race, that is. Callum, well done on that first podium of the season. Newsham then 2nd place, and I think rather disappointed not to have got the win, but it is still his first podium of the season. Isaac Smith, meanwhile, makes his 3rd appearance on the podium, but Isaac, it's been a bit win or bust for you, hasn't it, really? You've had those 2 victories this year and hardly any points scored outside of those 2 races at Donington Park, so a bit of consistency is just what the doctor ordered, really.
Yeah, we've had a bit of bad luck, to be honest, with just silly incidents that have happened out of my hands in every way. Last time at Alton, we really had a chance to get a good reverse grid race, and so they got taken off. And yeah, obviously, without the team, I don't think I'd be where I am, because I've only done maybe 15 laps in practice, and obviously the team, Briggs, has supplied me with a setup, and it's just, yeah, it works really well for this track, and yeah.
Well, you were able to sort of take it a little bit easy, I suppose. Had quite a lonely run to 3rd place in that race. Race 2 won't be quite so calm, will it? You're starting from 10th on the grid. What's the target you're setting yourself ahead of this one?
Let's get through the pack. I love a race like this.
Well, we know who we're training our cameras on at the start then. It looks like you're going to be trying to make some progress. Isaac, well done on that podium, mate.
Thank you.
There you have it then, our podium finishers, the highs and lows of motorsport. Hey, David, ecstatic Charlie Oliver, really happy with the race win, and Callum Newsham thinking, what do I have to do to get a bit of good luck in this championship? Brilliant race, though.
It was indeed. It was a great advert for the drivers, for sim racing, for touring car racing. And in one of those little quirks of life, we've been banging on about how Charlie Oliver had 5 fastest race laps in a row, and then he got a pole position, and then he got a race win. It was Callum Newsham that got the fastest lap of the race in his pursuit. So that's a consolation prize. At least it's another point for Callum. So we're going to get ready for race 2 very shortly. So there the drivers are good to go. And it is Rob Butler this time who is going to be on the pole position on the outside of the grid as we get set for the second race of the day. And let's see in all of this who it is going to be that comes out on top, because with a really jumbled grid, I'm assuming Mike Epps is going to join us from the very back. He too is going to find a huge amount of work needs to be done. 25 cars on this grid. He is the 25th. He's also in the heaviest with the 75 kilos of weight, because as we keep saying, you carry the weight for the day, you don't shed any after a poor result in race 1. So Rob Butler then, as the lights go red, is the man on pole position. He has got Dan Zelos with 45 kilos of weight alongside him. Lights out, good getaway by Zelos, good getaway also by Max Gott from the second row. And Rob Butler gets his nose in front then as they make the run down towards Riches for the first time. But Dan Zelos keeps on coming on the inside line. The Golf tries to squeeze up. There's contact between the two of them. Butler gets fired out sideways. He's still sorting out a moment. He's all over the grass. He's off the road. He's back on, he's off again, he's taken others with him, and there is mayhem at Wilson. Butler, I think, just ended up there like a pinball, bouncing from car to car, barrier to barrier, and so Robbie Stapleford, who was third on the grid, leads the way from Jack Keithley up from the third row, and somehow, I think Rob Butler is fourth behind Dave Marshall, despite the fact that he seemed to bounce off just about everybody on the run up towards the hairpin, and I suspect we might be having the safety car. We are, because everybody has slowed right down. There's one on the grass there, but the safety car is deployed to try to bunch everybody back up. And Mike Epps, I understand, has not been able to take part in the race after all. So Mike Epps, a non-starter. But Robbie Stapleford, who had a win at Alton Park, leads. We're behind the safety car.
Yes, that was all quite dramatic, wasn't it? Snetterton is kind of known for this, isn't it? It's one of the narrowest circuits in the country, and as you made the point before race 1, they start them here for reasons I don't quite understand, with a side-by-side grid, which just adds extra congestion to that run through the first few corners. Then you put cars at the front of the grid who haven't got the ultimate pace maybe of some of the cars coming from further behind, and it is rather a recipe for disaster. But Robbie Stapleford and Jack Keithley drove really well, and Dave Marshall as well, to get through that drama in the top 3 positions. They are championship contenders, all 3 of them, remember, and with Mike Epps not set to score any points at all this weekend, this is a golden opportunity for those 3 drivers to take some points out of him. Marshall now has the championship lead, but Keithley is now only 8 points behind Epps as well, so Jack Keithley, running second place in that Audi, needs a good result, and he's been given a brilliant opportunity to get one.
Safety car in already then, so the pace was slowed, but because of the length of the lap, it doesn't take long to get everybody back together again, so we're going to go racing, and it is Robbie Stapleford then ahead of Jack Keithley. Now Jack could score really well out of all of this, couldn't he, as they come up towards the line then. He in the first race was 8th, but he's for a notional podium right now. Jack Keithley second as they come over the timing line. We go racing once more, 17.5 minutes plus a lap to go. So it is Robbie Stapleford who leads the way, Jack Keithley second, Dave Marshall is third, then it's Butler, Goff, Zelos 6th, Brennan is 7th, Callum Newsham 8th, Charlie Oliver 9th, up to 10th, going really well, Martin Richards ahead of Dave Newsham, and then Max Bird, of course, another driver trying to work his way through from a poor result in race 1. So Stapleford at the moment leads the way. Is he going to be able to get away as there's more drama there at the Wilson hairpin? And that involved, I'm afraid, Cat Impey.
And I think Max Bird was the other Honda that she tangled with. Didn't quite see how that started, but it's not been a good day, really, has it, for those Honda Civics. Robbie Stapleford then leads them down to Agostini. Challenge for third. More than a challenge for third. A change for third there. Rob Butler with a brilliant dive up the inside of Dave Marshall. Marshall, of course, quite a bit heavier than Rob Butler. That might have played its part in that. Peugeot's getting themselves together here because we've got Max Goff there in 5th position, then the Golf of Jordan Brennan, about 2 Golfs together, Jordan Brennan 6th, Dan Zelos 7th, then 8th position is Callum Newsham, race 1 runner-up, and race 1 winner Charlie Oliver right behind him, so they've gained some ground as well. Really, all of our heavy hitters, arguably, managed to survive that first lap skirmish. Is skirmish a strong enough word? I'm not sure it is. And whatever happened on the first lap, and they're all running there inside the top 10 again.
They are, for the moment. So Stapleford it is that leads the way as Goff there tries to go through on the inside. He's 4th. Jordan Brennan up on the inside of Dave Marshall. So Dave looking to leave here as championship leader, but he is losing places. Even so, banking points right now. Jack Keithley only a 1/5 of a second behind Robbie Stapleford. It's game on for the race lead, and Jack needs to get on with this before he gets caught by Rob Butler. Into the final corner of the lap they come as Max Bird is under attack from David Ward lower down the order. 13th place currently is Max Bird. So Stapleford leads ahead of Keithley, but before long I reckon it's going to be 3 for the lead, because Rob Butler there, look, serving in 10th, the Butler, he is up with them pretty much. Gap is widening before 4th going through. There is Max Goff, Jordan Brennan 5th, Dan Zelos is 6th. Robbie Stapleford leads the way, but as we've been making the point, it's a long lap, and by the end of it, you could have lost a big chunk of time. And look, Keithley is right there attacking as they come out of the hairpin. So that lead battle well and truly joined. Jack Keithley needs to do this before he gets caught by Rob Butler.
Yeah, Jack Keithley and Robbie Stapleford even are only 9 kilos apart in success ballast as well. It is Keithley that's the heavier of the two even, so in a way you'd expect the Cooper to have the edge, but I just think the Audi is working so well through this middle sector. We saw it from Charlie Oliver in race 1, Keithley making use of that again in race 2, can close right in on the Cooper, and then down the straight they are both pretty evenly matched. Remember, the Cooper and the Audi both come from the VAG family of cars, don't they? So they've got very similar performance in a straight line, but the Audi is the sleeker shape perhaps, so that might just help Keithley. He's also got to watch his mirrors though, because there's a sideways Rob Butler closing in on him. See what the straight line performance is like then. On board with Keithley in 2nd. He's got the slipstream, he's got the more streamlined car, and that does mean that he's inching towards Stapleford. Really gains there as he changes into 6th gear. He can't quite get close enough before the braking zone, but look at the way that he not only caught the leader but got away from Rob Butler as well. I think Keithley is in good shape here. He's got a car that's working well, and he looks like he's got the measure of Stapleford.
Go along with that, but as I say, Rob Butler is the danger, because if Jack gets stuck and can't find a way through and therefore goes slower, Rob Butler could catch and perhaps even pass. Stapleford then at the end of the lap comes up towards the timing line, still being chased by Jack Keithley then, so it is the Cooper ahead of the Audi. In 3rd place, Rob Butler, with the Peugeot 308. Gap back to Max Goff, Jordan Brennan, Callum Newsham, Dan Zelos, Charlie Oliver 8th, Dave Marshall 9th, Dave Newsham 10th. Long queue of cars out of all of that. Max Bird is a retirement, incidentally. He has gone for the pit lane after going off track, so we've lost Max Bird. We never had Mike Epps in the first place, so 2 quick drivers missing from the results here as Stapleford then by 4/10 leads up towards Wilson. What about Isaac Smith lower down the order? He's 14th, still with work to do. He's tucked up behind Craig Keeble, and that is 98 Jordan Brennan looking for a way past Max Goff, but Brennan wide out of turn 3, just cost himself a fraction of time. He's on his toes though, going down towards Agostini.
Yeah, he is looking to try and find a way through. Headlights ablaze, look from Callum Newsham behind. 6th position now for Callum. He's coming through nicely here, isn't he? And because the leaders are not really escaping, he'll be hoping he can gain more ground here into the middle part of the race. Brennan runs a bit wide there, coming out of Hamilton. That'll put some dirt on the tyres, but actually it's the car in front that makes the mistake. Max Goff runs wide, opens the door for Jordan Brennan, who needed no second invitation. He dives through, gets a bit of a punt on the apex for his troubles. That delays both of them, and then here comes the rapid Hyundai of Callum Newsham, which we know seems to be able to engage that extra gear down the Bentley straight. He's got a double slipstream and makes it 3 abreast into the braking zone. Oh, I'm worried about how this is going to end out. Yeah, there you go, contact between all 3 of them. They're all going to get delayed. Oh no, and as rejoining the circuit there was Max Goff. That almost caused more chaos. I think they all came out of it pretty much okay. Brennan 4th, Newsham up to 5th, and Dan Zelos maybe the big beneficiary. Dave Newsham now having a go at the back of Charlie Oliver. You could see that one coming, couldn't you?
Afraid so, and it has shuffled the order. It has also given 1 or 2 drivers a bit of damage. We've lost Senna Proctor from the fray effectively because he's fallen way back into 22nd. Up towards the timing line they then come. and James Merrills has gained a place lower down because as you were looking at all of that happening round about 6th and 7th, there was more mayhem towards the back of midfield, so there's been another shuffle of drivers lower down the order. Now, Jordan Brennan versus Callum Newsham, they are together going up towards Wilson, and are we going to see Callum attack? Yes, we are, but he can't find a way through on the way into the corner. Jordan Brennan a little bit wide coming out of it. Callum slots in behind. Dan Zelos is there 6th, Charlie Oliver 7th, Dave Newsham is 8th. And Robbie Stapleford up front, he's not only hanging on to that lead, but has just stretched it by a length. And look, Rob Butler, keep making the point, I know, but he is looking menacing and he's almost with them now. Jack Keithley doesn't seem to have an answer to the Cupra ahead of him. It is a three-way fight for the race lead. The next wave of cars a long way back 4th, still headed by Jordan Brennan. But what can Keithley do about the race leader before he comes under real attack from Butler?
It looks to me like they're settling into a bit of a mid-race rhythm, aren't they now? We saw this a bit from Oliver and Callum Newsham in race 1. Things settled down in the middle part of the race, and what decided it ultimately was who had the best tyres in the final sort of 5 or 6 minutes. So we'll monitor those gaps. They're staying pretty static at about 3/10 between Stapleford and Keithley, the same back to Butler in 3rd. When that starts to change, that might be an indication that one car maybe has looked after its tyres better than the others. Behind them, though, there's some real racing going on, isn't there? Callum Newsham here right on the boot lid of Jordan Brennan's Golf. He's got Zelos and Oliver right behind him as well. Now, what of Dave Marshall, championship leader after that first race, remember? 11th place, all that he can manage at the moment. So Marshall has actually lost ground from where he started, and at the moment doesn't seem able to pick it back up. He's within a second of Martin Richards and Max Goff, but isn't racing back towards them, is he?
No, and I suspect part of that isn't just the weight, but may well be damage, because there have been so many incidents that if he's got involved in more than a couple of them, and he may well have done, I think that car is probably not quite 100%. So this becomes a little bit of damage limitation, conceivably, for Dave Marshall, as there through is Callum Newsham, Jordan Brennan and Dan Zelos. Fastest lap of the race, Charlie Oliver. Couldn't do it when he wins, but while he's playing catch-up here, closing on Zelos, so Charlie is quicker than anybody else on the lap. Callum Newsham, having got himself up past Jordan Brennan, looks like he's been released pretty easily there, because Brennan has to go defensive against Zelos. So can Callum Newsham now get onto terms with the top 3? He's got half the race in which to do it. It could be a go, that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got the pace, hasn't he? And he's probably quite fired up, I would say, after losing out on the last lap in race 1. He's got this lovely clean air ahead of him now. The starting point then is about 3.1 seconds. Let's see how quickly that can come down. I'd imagine down this next straight towards the Brundle and Nelson complex, it might come down a bit more. Charlie Oliver there locking up and running wide in the background. Charlie Oliver, who as it stands would be, I think, 3rd in the championship. Actually, if we threw the checkered flag now, Dave Marshall and Jack Keithley would be joint championship leaders, and that's before Keithley potentially challenges and maybe even takes the race lead away from Robbie Stapleford. So Jack Keithley having a really good day here, isn't he? He's buying himself well and truly back into this championship conversation, helped no doubt by the misfortune suffered by Mike Epps, but that Audi is working well here and he's absolutely making the most of it.
He is indeed. Max Goff trying to recover from his big moment at the S's a few laps back, running 10th on the tail of the PowerMax Racing entry in the hands of Martin Richards, the drift star, adapting from real-world rear-wheel drive to simulated front-wheel drive, but really enjoying himself and racing increasingly competitively as the season has gone on. Stapleford then, a 10th up on Keithley last timing sector, and Jack is much quicker over the lap. Indeed, he has a go for the race lead, down on the inside into Riches, and yes, through he goes! The Audi goes through. So, as Callum Newsham sets the fastest lap, Jack Keithley becomes the race leader. Robbie Stapleford is going to be under attack from Rob Butler because he is right there behind him, and this is perhaps what Keithley needs. Now, if Stapleford goes defensive, he's going to delay himself, and Jack might be able to pull away, but I don't think there's any guarantee in all of that. We have got 3 of them, nose to tail for the race leader, but Jack Keithley could now be on for a maiden win. He's hit the front.
Yeah, he needs to try and get away now, doesn't he? The last thing he needs is Stapleford coming back at him, as we saw from Oliver and Callum Newsham in race number 1. This is really delaying them, though. Look, remember, I think it was only a lap ago I said that Callum Newsham was 3.1 seconds behind them. He's almost halved that now, hasn't he? Look, the gap is under 2 seconds between 3rd place Butler and 4th place Newsham, and these 3 aren't going to go any quicker anytime soon, are they? Because this battle is only going to intensify. So Callum Newsham definitely has the pace to catch this group, but what can he do with them when he gets there? Keithley then leads the way, Stapleford second, Butler in third. 3 different cars in this group. Let's see what the straight line speed difference is between Audi, Cupra and Peugeot. It's the Audi, of course, that's punching the hole in the air for the other 2, but it's the Audi, regardless of that, that's getting away. Cupra and Peugeot, of course, very similar shapes, so their straight line speed is pretty evenly matched. Callum Newsham, though, in the Hyundai takes another half a second out of them in one straight.
Yeah.
Well, it's a long straight, but that's still impressive.
And with 6.5 minutes and a lap to go, he's going to be up there. Callum Newsham could yet win this, depending on whether Keithley gets away. Because if Callum can catch up to the traffic, well, yeah, but he's got the pace. And now that he's proved he can have a race with a reasonable amount of good fortune, I know he didn't win it, but at least he didn't come back with the car in bits for a change. I reckon he could still be on for this. But if Keithley builds the lead, it could all be a different story. But he's not getting away, is he? Jack Keithley, and don't forget, he's got a heavier car than many of those around him, 57 kilos of weight on board, so he's not fleeing into the distance. He does lead. Butler tees up for a go on the inside line. He should go second here, and he does relatively easily. But look behind, Newsham is almost there.
Yeah, that was good stuff, that, from Butler, though. It was actually a mistake from Stapleford. Stapleford ran too wide out of Riches, and that meant that Butler was able to make the move without really holding the 2 cars up. So that was a pretty nice, neat way of doing that. Newsham is now within a second of them, though, so he will definitely be gobbling them up down that back straight this time around. Then we've got Brennan 5th, and this battle for 6th position. Dan Zelos, Charlie Oliver, and Dave Newsham. I tell you what, if Zelos is this quick with 45 kilos in the car, how rapid is he going to be in a week's time when he sheds that newcomer's ballast? He is going to be right up there fighting for race wins. Too late, definitely, for him to mount a championship challenge, having missed the first 3 events. But Dan Zelos for race wins later on this season, definitely a possibility. He's under pressure now, though, from Charlie Oliver, who elbows his way through there, going out onto the Bentley straight. That was a slightly clumsier move than we saw from Butler on Stapleford at the start of the lap. It does delay them a little, and so Dave Newsham is with them now. Newsham with the double toe and the power from that I-30N down the straight. Can't get close enough this time into the braking zone, but Charlie Oliver continuing now to make progress. I'll be interested to see whether or not he can catch Brennan and challenge for 5th.
And also, is Keithley getting away from Butler for the race lead and therefore taking this out of range of everybody else? Well, there is a gap, but here comes Callum Newsham then as they drop down towards the completion here of the 8th lap of the race. Over the curb goes Stapleford then, so is that going to help Newsham perhaps to get onto terms? Up towards the timing line they come, 4 minutes and counting, plus the regulation lap at the end. Newsham is closing, but he's going to run out of straight, brake, turn in. But he has saved another couple of lengths, hasn't he, as he dives down through Riches. Up a gear now, heading towards Wilson, and then he'll stand on the anchors, go down through the box, and turn sharp right. And look, he's virtually on the back of the Cupra. A good run out of that corner might help into turn 3, as Oliver, ahead of Zelos, has got Dave Newsham then for company as well. So a 3-way fight for 6th place. But look up the road, 3rd and 4th, nose to tail. Robbie Stapleford is just ahead of Callum Newsham. And this is Callum's view, down towards Agostini. Gap on the inside, he's going to commit, he's going to go for it, he's going to go through, but will he run out wide? If he does, that's going to enable Stapleford to fight back. No, good effort, good pass by Callum Newsham. A place gained, and he's closing on the leaders.
That was a textbook overtake, wasn't he? Got the run out of Palmer's, indicated that he was going to the inside nice and early so that Stapleford couldn't move across and block, and then he just simply outbraked the Cupra, didn't he? He was just so much better on the brakes. Stapleford's 48 kilos of success ballast perhaps holding him back a little there, but it's not holding back Callum Newsham anymore because he's free from the heavier Cupra, and he's now got some clear air again to chase after the top 2, who themselves are getting themselves back together again. That gap went from 6 tenths to 8 tenths in the first sector. It did briefly come back down again in the middle sector, but again, I think the Audi is better in a straight line, so down the end of the Bentley straight, it gets away. The key here to Callum Newsham's prospects of winning this race is how quickly he can dispatch of Rob Butler. If he gets embroiled in a battle with Butler, even for half a lap or so, it'll just give Keithley, I think, enough of an advantage that he can stroke it home. But if Newsham can get past Butler without delaying them too much, he might yet have time to catch the leader.
Would also help if Butler can catch the race leader, of course. He's been threatening so to do on that lap. The gap widens again because Keithley is fractionally faster. Remember, 57 kilos aboard Keithley's Audi. Rob Butler is carrying 39 kilos of weight in the Peugeot, and Callum Newsham for this brace of races is ballast free, so he should have the quicker car because it is the lighter of those three. That last lap that Newsham did was a 53.2, so he is lapping quicker than the two ahead of him, no question. He's lapping quicker than Butler, we know that because he's catching, but he's lapping faster than the race leader as well. There is going to be this lap and at least one more, possibly two more. And there, look, he's right on the tail of Butler. He's at the inside going into Agostini. Job done. And with time to spare, suddenly things are looking really optimistic for Callum Newsham now.
Yeah, absolutely. Second place for Newsham now. 1.3 seconds is the gap to Jack Keithley. And he's got this lap and one more, hasn't he, to get that done. So he can catch him, but will he then find himself once again coming second best in a last lap battle with an Audi? It's a different Audi than the one that he was racing in race one. Charlie Oliver, the race one winner, currently sitting in 6th position. But Callum Newsham is on fire this weekend. Came into this weekend, remember, 11th place in the championship, outside the top 10. And if we threw the checkered flag now, he'd be within about 10 or 11 points of the championship lead. This could be a season-defining pair of races for Callum Newsham if he can finish the job. Even second place is better than going for a risky move for the lead and ending up off the road. I hope he's thinking of that, because he's on for a good points haul here. But when you've got the pace and you come through the field like this, especially after that disappointment of missing out on the race one win, you want to go that one step further, don't you? You want to get the race win and really round it off in style.
Touring car drivers think, yes, gosh, what a lot of things we learned today. Callum Newsham there is lapping quicker, the gap is tumbling. Stuart Lyons, by the way, has got a drive-through penalty for cutting, effectively for ignoring track limits. Now, he won't have time to serve that before the end, so that should translate to a 30-second penalty post-race, like Alex Toth-Jones copped at Alton Park. So, look at the gap, it's already under a second, and there's this lap and one more. So Callum Newsham is closing, and he's got the time left in the race to do it. Now, we haven't yet touched on driver of the day, but for my money, Callum Newsham ought to be a real candidate for that, because I know he didn't win the first race, but he drove so well, and he's, again, underlined his ability in this, and he might yet be a race winner with a lap and a half to go. Look, 9/10 it was, now 7/10. Jack Keithley's car, heavier. Jack deserves a race win also, but Callum Newsham is all fired up, and that disappointment of, what, half an hour or so ago could well now be dissipated if he can get onto terms with the Audi ahead of him and perhaps squeeze by on the last lap.
Yeah, remember, they're both looking for their first win of the season, although you could argue that Keithley, with his two podiums earlier on in the season at Brands Hatch, has had the slightly stronger start to the year, but Newsham, maybe just because of the precise sort of situation that he finds himself in this weekend, having come so close to a win already, is going to be the more fired up for it. Lots of battles still going on further back. I could see Dave Newsham there sizing up Dan Zelos for 7th. Then you've got this group with Martin Richards, Max Goff and David Ward all nose to tail. David Ward's going pretty well, isn't he, this weekend, running in 11th position at the moment, inside the points then, and only one good overtake away from breaking into that top 10. But Max Goff holding strong at the moment. Callum Newsham, meanwhile, has taken nearly a second out of Jack Keithley in just over a lap. He's in the slipstream now, and he might be able to challenge down to riches.
So, if he does it here, does that leave him vulnerable for the rest of the lap? He's got to time it well, hasn't he, to make sure that Jack Keithley can't come back in. Keithley looks like he goes a little bit wider around Riches. Does that give Newsham a chance to challenge at Wilson? It does not, because Keithley covers off the inside line. Newsham to the outside, wants an undercut, but he can't find it there. So, he's clear of Butler. Callum Newsham can concentrate on making the attack, and it could well come down towards Agostini, because we've seen him pull off a move there before. Is he close enough? Gets a good run out of Palmer.
His previous lap was 9/10 quicker than Keithley, and his fastest lap is about 8/10 quicker than Keithley's gone at any point. So there's no doubt here as to who the quicker of these two drivers is in this race. Again, ballast definitely playing a part in that, but you can't deny the way that Callum Newsham has driven in this race. He's kept a calm head on his shoulders despite all of the drama he's had to negotiate. There's a mistake there from Keithley. That puts him on the defensive line into Oggies at the tight exit. Though again, the Audi is able to turn tighter out of that corner. That's what we saw from Charlie Oliver in the previous race. Oliver, by the way, into 50s now, whilst all this has been going on. This is Newsham's opportunity, though. He's in the slipstream, got a good exit there from Williams onto the Bentley straight, weaving around left, right, left, right. There's just about a Hyundai-sized gap on the inside, and Callum Newsham goes for it. He's got the inside line for Brundle. He's late on the brakes. Callum Newsham leads with just a handful of corners to go, but he's offline into Nelson. Can Keithley get the better exit? Yes, he can, but he can't get up the inside into the bomb hole. One more realistic overtaking opportunity left. It's going to be another last corner shootout at Snetterton.
Rob Butler could yet win this, couldn't he, if they tangle? So Callum Newsham leads the way. Jack Keithley second. Down they come. Last corner, last lap. Flag at the ready. Callum Newsham with second in the earlier race leads up towards the line. Jack Keithley will be oh so frustrated. He's not going to quite get close enough to challenge. He pulls out, thinks better of it. Callum Newsham wins then. Fabulous drive from 11th on the grid to win by 0.3 of a second. Fantastic racing. Great battle goes over the line there. Charlie Oliver just fourth ahead of Jordan Brennan and Robbie Stapleford. Newsham, Keithley, Butler the top three. They come pouring over the line, but Callum Newsham, very deserved race winner indeed out of all of that. Jack Keithley so near and yet so far in second place. Rob Butler third. We'll confirm the rest of the result in a moment because they're still pouring over the line, including their Stuart Lynes, who fends off Craig Keeble on the road, but given a 30-second penalty for that drive-through, converted post-race, he'll drop down the order yet further. And over the line, Kenny Press finishing for that race in 20th place. So Callum Newsham takes a maiden victory ahead of Jack Keithley and then Rob Butler. Fourth for Charlie Oliver ahead of Jordan Brennan in fifth place, and Robbie Stapleford sixth ahead of Dave Newsham, Dan Zelos, Martin Richards and Max Goff to round out the top 10. Right, let's try and grab a word with our top three drivers. Andy McEwan is on his way to the interview booth.
A few stories to tell, I think, after that race on there. Let's start then with our race winner. It was Callum Newsham. Callum, you finally got that first victory, but in true Newsham style, you didn't make it easy for yourself, did you? Left it right until the very last moment.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't think I would get it because Jack was pretty quick, the amount of weight he's carrying. But yeah, I just got it the last sector there. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that.
Did you sort of plan that ahead of time? Because we heard Charlie saying that he was doing that to you in the first race. He knew where he was strong, he knew where he'd have to attack. Your advantage, or your car's advantage at least, is in a straight line. So were you kind of planning that move down the back straight ahead of time?
No, not really. I wasn't really planning it. I was just trying to go as fast as I could to catch him up and pass him.
Well, no, that's refreshingly honest, and it's quite exciting to watch a driver who just acts in the spur of the moment. You've been really exciting to watch all day long. It's been a really productive day for you as well. I've just been totting up some of the points. You came into this weekend outside the top 10. I reckon you're inside the top 5 now, probably only 5 points off the championship lead. It's game on this, isn't it?
Yeah, game on, because Alton Park last round, I had a crap one, so I really needed to get a lot of points this weekend to get back in the championship fight.
It's definitely been your best weekend so far. Can you, though, carry this momentum on to Knock Hill? Because you're going to be carrying more success ballast now than you've carried at any point this season, and that isn't an easy track to carry the weight at.
No, and I'm really struggling to carry weight in this car as well, so it's going to be hard, I'll tell you that.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing how you get on. For the time being, though, brilliant racing from you today. Congratulations on the 2 results. You finally got that first victory.
Cheers, thank you.
Newsham then gets himself the race win, and just as in race 1, there's an elated race winner, and I'd imagine a slightly disappointed runner-up, this time in Jack Keithley. But Jack, can you take any sort of solace from the fact that at least you're back on the podium for the first time since Brands Hatch, and I reckon you're joint second in the championship, so not a bad day's work, really.
No, I'm happy. I mean, I'm thinking back to the Donington round when, frankly, I dropped a lot of points because of my own idiocy. So, racing Callum at the very end, I was a bit hesitant. I didn't want to do anything that could mess me up when I was already in a very good position. So, yeah, it's just, Callum, you could let me have that one, but the weight just really dragged me down there. So, but I'm still really happy overall. I mean, I avoided quite a lot of accidents in both races, so I'm just taking everything I've got right now and heading on to the next round.
where it looks like you'll be probably carrying a similar amount of weight, maybe 9 kilos more than you did this weekend. Do you find that the more races you carry that weight in, even if they're at different tracks, do you find that you're able to learn how to set the car up around it more and learn maybe how to drive around that weight with the more races you get under your belt?
Yeah, I feel like, I'm learning more about the car, about the game, about the setup, and I'm just feeling better with each race. If I went back to Brands Hatch with what I know now and how I feel at the moment, I think I'd be contending for a race win rather than third place in that. So I'm really happy where I am right now, and yeah, let's keep on pushing forward. And the Williams eSport Audi is really, really motoring along.
Well, a very different challenge in Knock Hill in a week's time. We'll look forward to seeing how you get on there, but well done on finally making a return to the podium.
Thank you very much. Hope everyone enjoyed the show.
Well, most definitely. 2 fantastic races today. You've all kept us entertained this Saturday afternoon, including our third place finisher, Rob Butler, who, Rob, I guess you had a slightly quieter time of it than the 2 that we've just had a chat with, but still an entertaining race. You must have been sat there in third place on the last lap thinking, oh, guys, take each other off. I could be in for a race win here.
Yeah, that's why I let Colin through into Agostini. I just ran in a little bit wide not to lose time because at the start, Zelos just literally drove into my quarter panel and put me sideways, and I was trying to gather the slide up all the way down into the hairpin, and the car was like literally so much damage all round, and the steering wheel wasn't very straight, so I don't know how I managed to hang in there, but it wasn't worth the fight with Callum. I was just hoping that he'd catch Jack and take a couple of points off him, because I thought he'd be leading the championship after Mike's day that he's had.
Yeah, we're just seeing a replay of the first lap as well. You did have that lead briefly into the first corner, didn't you? And then a little bit of contact. Talk us through the start of that race from your perspective.
Yeah, we came down. I got quite a good start off the line. I should have been I was on pole position, but for some reason at Snetterton put you on the outside of the track. So Dan was alongside down into turn 1, and I felt like I left him plenty of space, but I don't know if he clipped the curb on the inside or what, but he just hit my quarter panel as I was catching the first slide. I was quite slow and had to drop a gear, and I got some more contact from behind, and yeah, I was sliding all the way down into the hairpin. So how I came out of it, I don't know. And race 1 didn't go so well at the start either, but yeah, my own fault. I had more speed in qualifying and I just didn't hook a lap up, so I put myself in the position I did today, and yeah, look, some decent points and not so much weight for the next race, but still quite close in the championship.
Yeah, it's all very tight now, and I think when you see the points a little while later, you'll be pretty happy, actually, in the way that you've come out of this weekend, especially given how that race started. Rob, well done, back on the podium again for the second time this year, and very much still in title contention heading into the second half of the season. Congratulations.
Yeah, with less weight, which is much better going into next week.
Absolutely. Well, there you go then. Rob Butler gets the third place, and there on your screens we're seeing the championship points. I mean, we might as well have just hit the reset button midway through the season, because they're all back together. Charlie Oliver just 1 point ahead of Jack Keighley, who's 2 points ahead of Dave Marshall. He's the same distance ahead of Callum Newsham, and then another 2 points back to Jordan Brennan. But we have got the top 6 drivers now covered by just 10 points. It's insanely close. Good news, I'm sure, for our series director, Rich Hayden, who I'm going to remember to talk to this time in the podium room. Rich, what an afternoon of entertainment we've had. And as a series director, this is exactly what you want to see. Hard, clean racing, close finishes, and the championship couldn't be more finely poised.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah. We've had a change of lead at the championship. 2 new people, first and second. Obviously, really disappointed for Mike Epps having the technical issue and not being able to join for race 2. It's really affected his championship at the moment, but I'm sure he will come back. But yeah, fantastic. Really, really pleased with today's racing.
Yeah, I mean, so many highlights, and both of the races boiling down to last lap deciders. Do you think that was the circuit that lent itself to that sort of racing, or is it just that the drivers are getting more used now to the Assetto Corsa platform, the cars, and maybe gaining in confidence as they do so?
I think the ballast is obviously having a little bit of an effect on there. Callum coming through, by the way, Callum Newsham, driver of the day for me, absolutely outstanding. Despite the commentator's curse, he managed to come through with 2 really good positions. But yeah, the ballast is really leveling the playing field, and as Mike said it last week, I've made it hard for them to win. So mixing it up is really exciting for everybody to watch.
You've taken the words right out of my mouth with Callum Newsham, definitely my candidate for driver of the day. But since that's going to be, I think, and we'll bring David in on this in a moment, but I think it'll be a fairly unanimous decision that Callum's the driver of the day. Let me ask you instead, with halfway through the season now, who's your driver of the championship so far? Because up until this weekend, I guess Mike Epps was the strong favourite, but we've got so many drivers now that are contenders. 6 different winners we've had now from the first 8 races. Is there one driver that you think, yeah, they've caught my eye, they're the hot favourites going into the second half?
Do you know what? That's a very difficult question to answer.
That's why I'm asking you the question, not letting David ask me.
Yeah, do you know what? That's really difficult for me to put a name to it, because there's been so many drivers that have performed really well. You know, not just at the front, but also in the middle of the pack as well. It's extremely competitive, and those practice times, as you've been seeing, are so close. You know, and it really doesn't do the guys justice that are coming in from, you know, 6th down round to 15th place with regards to their perceived position, because it's so close. I can't give you a driver of the championship at the moment. I'm sorry, it's too difficult for me to say.
It was worth a try, I suppose. Rich, thanks for stopping by for a chat. We look forward to hearing from you again at Knock Hill. That's going to be an interesting pair of races, I think, isn't it, next week?
Well, Croft, yeah, we've had a calendar change. We're going to go to Croft instead of Knock Hill. So yeah, really looking forward to that.
There you go. Even more exciting. Croft is a brilliant circuit, one of my personal favourites. So looking forward to that one. Rich, thank you very much for stopping by for a chat. David, that was all quite exciting. I would go as far as to say that was my favourite pair of races we've had so far. Both of them absolute nail-biters. My word, is this championship looking tight going into the second half of the season.
It's like we've got 2 championships, isn't it? As you say, that with that reset button remark, you know, what we've had with Epps versus Marshall for the first part of the year, and after today, you look at that championship graphic and it's a completely different story. So not only have we had 2 great races, it has set us up very nicely indeed for the second half of the championship. Croft, as you've heard, is going to be the next stop rather than Knock Hill, which was a bit destructive for the Minis. So Croft in a week's time. Then we've got 2 visits to Silverstone still to look forward to. The National Circuit, which is one of my favourites. I know drivers always say it's a bit boring with only 3 corners, but it always delivers great racing because it's easy and it's wide and you can overtake. So that's going to be great. Then it's the International Circuit, which is something different. And of course the Grand Prix Circuit to round out the championship on the 20th of March. You've got to feel a bit for Robbie Stapleford after today. He led more laps than anybody in that second race and ended up in 6th, but a brilliant job done by Callum Newsham, and let's not forget Charlie Oliver as well as another driver to score a maiden victory. So next stop is Croft then in a week's time. It's a very jumbled championship situation, and that means that people are going to be carrying ballast and more ballast than they've experienced before, and that, especially around Croft with the tight hairpins at the end of the lap, is going to make for some very interesting racing indeed. 2 great races today. Well done, Charlie Oliver. Well done, Callum Newsham, not only as a race winner, but as driver of the day. And thanks for your company. We'll see you then in a week's time as the story continues in the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with PowerMax Racing, powered by VRRC. For now, from Andy McEwan and David Addison, it's goodbye. Between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.